All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. So this is the first one of the year. We'll go ahead with our roll call, please.
Ryan Green,
Here.
Jesse Cobble,
Here.
Ben Lee,
Here.
Steve Dyer, Kristen Hurst.
Here.
All right, we'll go with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I want to welcome our new member. Everybody say hello to Kristen. And our returning member, Jesse. And I will let Sean give his brief synopsis.
There's not much to it. Staff was just trying to get all of its bases covered. What we wanted to notify the applicant was that there's only 4 members here tonight. And so procedurally, there's a little bit of an obstacle. So we always like to inform the applicant with as much information as they can to make a decision based upon how many seating board members that we have. So working through that, as well as some last minute items that we were looking into. Some of these items, we still don't have the information, but we'll continue to research those that may be applicable to this particular piece. Also, this tonight would just be a recommendation. If you are here for the zoning map amendment, this is a recommendation. It would then go to council. Council would then do a vote, which would be the deciding factor on this. So that's caused for some of the delay. We just need to confer with legal counsel and the planning staff, as well as the applicant. So apologize, and with that, I'll allow Ryan to have at her.
All right. We will move on to our next item here, the election of the chairman and vice chairman. Is there any conversation on that?
I would make a motion to table it till Steve gets back.
Okay.
I just, excuse me, I don't have a problem doing that because I think we need to have 5 members here to elect leadership. What I think we need to do, though, is we need to elect a chair for this meeting specifically, just in the interim.
Okay.
I'll defer to Teresa and Yaz. Is that something that procedurally we can do without submitting for a permanent chair?
Yes.
You second my motion?
Is there a motion any which way?
I think Jesse made the motion to defer item 4 to the next meeting.
And then we can make another motion after that, once we vote on this one.
So Jesse made a motion to defer.
So I'll second that.
Are all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll add that to the next agenda.
All right, and then for tonight,
Does someone want to make a motion or someone to run the meeting tonight? Chair for this evening.
I'll offer my name for consideration.
I'll second it.
Ben Lee,
Yes.
Jesse Cobble,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
no.
Kristen Hurst.
Yes.
All right. We'll go ahead and let Ben run tonight's meeting.
That is just for this evening, and then we'll have, the next meeting, we'll have the actual chairman.
All right.
So appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 5 then. Public comment. Excuse me. So if there's any public comment that we have for an item that is not on tonight's agenda, specifically the rezoning request for application Z23219, we will have public comment during that hearing for that application, but if there are any other comments to bring before the commission, we just ask you to come up to the microphone and please and thank you.
Is there a restriction on time? I know there was some talk of doing that. but not-
Did we sign, I guess we should ask if we have any sign-ins. Did we do the sign-in sheets for tonight? Okay, that's fine. So we'll restrict, we had 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, I think, previously. So that's fine. We'll time that, and then if we need to, we can talk about
Hi,
extending.
my name is Connie Ryan, and I have a concern about our downtown. Living here my whole life, I'm so proud of the way it looks, and I would like to try and maintain the original authenticity of the buildings. And the way it is now, a lot of buildings have been painted black. And for me personally, it is very depressing to have, as you're coming in from the south, all you see are black buildings. And as most of you know, I am a walker. When I walk around town, I always pick out my favorite building or my favorite house, just because it's boring otherwise. And it's always the architect of the beauty of our downtown buildings. And it's very upsetting that we're losing that. I don't know if this is the committee that addresses that. If you could make an ordinance, I don't know what the ordinance would be. You have to have a color in it, or Tiffany's little building, I love, it's beautiful. And I would just like for you to consider making an ordinance so our downtown is not all black.
Makes sense.
That's all I have to say about it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Connie.
And you don't have to respond if you want staff to
Yeah.
respond or not respond, that's up to you all.
So I would just say, correct me if I'm wrong, but a design review would typically handle a lot of the aesthetic applications with respect to the downtown. We've talked about historic overlay district specifically for that area, other areas within the community that we know have the historical, aesthetic that lends itself to the visual identity of the
Exactly.
community, right? So that's something that we've had conversations about, ignorant as to the exact happenings in the last council meeting if that was discussed, but I know it's been a part of the narrative in a variety of different manners for a while. So zoning may have some say within that, but overall, it most likely fall within design review board.
Mr. Chairman, is that a question?
So what do we do next then, Ben? Because we are part of the Historical Society, and that's
okay.
part of our agenda is to keep it as authentic as
Right.
we can. So where do we go then?
Council has to, what we're kind of trying to create is called a design overlay district for the downtown region. And council needs to appropriate money for that code to be written.
Okay,
That's where we're at a roadblock right now.
okay.
And that's part of it, yeah, the legislative piece of it requires labor and time and review and what have you, but yeah, Sean, if you want
I
to.
can give a staff just currently what we have on the books, and then to Jesse's point, and I believe Ben's point, what they're trying to get towards. So currently on the books, there is a design review commission and a COA application that was instituted, I believe, in 2021. So just recently. With that, there is a provision that any change of material that exists on most commercial buildings, if not all, and then in some areas of town that may be subject to residential zoning. So if there is a change in material, which changing from a brick to a latex vinyl, in my mind constitutes a change in material, that then would have to go through the design review board. We do have an application in right now that very scenario happened. It wasn't in the downtown. It was up on the hill. You may have seen some of the scaffolding. That is the issue that's being addressed, is some of that facade change had happened. Now, if it's just a paint over top of paint, as long as it's a neutral color, that isn't something that could create some contention that I'm going to defer to the board. Some of that can happen in-house, but I protect myself. If it's something that I feel may be contentious, I will give to the board for their final approval. But moving forward, any building that's not currently painted in the downtown, that is currently brick, would have to go before the design review board and have that process completely vetted. There would be time for public comment. So there is a small provision in there. However, specific colorations, specific designs, those are something that has not been identified yet that I believe council has indicated they would like to move forward with. MKSK is hopefully going to provide some direction and some guidance on putting together some architectural design standards specifically for the downtown, if not for other areas of the city as well. So, sorry for the long explanation.
No, I think that's it. I think everybody wants to make sure that we preserve that as much as we can, so.
Right now, the paint on paint is one of the things we don't have any leverage on right now, and that's, well, we're trying to fill that gap. It's on the radar for sure.
Do we have like an ETA? Like how long do we think it will take to do that?
Trevor, how long can you do that? I'm just kidding.
Sorry, I didn't, no pressure.
No, in all honesty, that's completely dependent on what the scope ultimately ends up being. So, there's a light touch you can do, which would be a quicker exercise, or there's, it really depends how far in the weeds the city wants to get. So I know that's a non-answer, but that really is the crux of it, is how detailed the regulations would end up being
They could do it incrementally, right? They could do a quick fix and then they could do something more robust.
Possibly, I think
Should we make a motion?
limiting the geographic
recommend
areas,
design overlay to
per
council?
se downtown would help expedite that process because
We could, but we
generally
wouldn't
the
have anything to
building,
stand
the
on.
built stock is older and similar construction and that sort of thing. Whereas if you start expanding out 37, 62, you're dealing with a lot of different building typologies, a
Yeah.
lot of different overall, just, there's a
You
lot of
couldn't argue
differences.
necessarily it was historical.
Right. I think it's something you're
Aesthetic.
definitely gonna see in the next month or so that comes through council. I think the conversation will start. We've been having these conversations for a couple of years. It's just been timing with everything else going
Yeah.
on to get them done. We had talked about pushing through zoning last year and we didn't end up doing that. So I think this is something that'll be council led. You'll see that in the next month or two start to happen.
We gotta get our master plan out of these guys first.
Yeah, we need we need the comprehensive plan done first. And then I think you'll see some of the other stuff start to come through.
So short answer, after the long answer, it's been a narrative, it's been a talking point, we're ready for action. So we're on the same page. Thanks, Connie. Any other public comment? All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment, move on to approval of the minutes from November 14th. And then Chris and I just say, if you aren't aware, you can abstain if you want, or you can vote to take the recorder's, Teresa's word for it, however you want to
I
go
would
about it.
abstain.
So,
I'll abstain.
but however you want to do it is fine. But we'll move on, approval of minutes from November 14th. Do we have a motion and a second? I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from November 14th.
I'll second.
Thank you. Well, you might have stayed. We'll do Bentley,
Yes.
Jesse Cobble,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Kristen Hurst.
I'll abstain because I don't know what this
You
is.
two absent.
I can't tell you whether they're accurate or not.
Perfectly fine.
I'm sure
Okay.
they are.
So with that, we'll move on to application Z-23-219, rezoning request. We will start with the staff review since we've got a robust amount of documentation around it. And then John will bring you up to talk about your application thereafter, okay?
You want to start off, Trevor?
Sure.
And then I'll sweep.
Yeah.
Because you'll be more complete than I will.
Sure. So the report that was submitted for this request starts on page 8 of 11 in your packet. This request is to rezone a small portion of two properties on Benedict Drive. Currently, the properties are split between the SR1 zoning and the UR1 zoning. The portions of these properties that are zoned SR1 were all annexed whenever, based on the information I was given, it appears that the pieces of the property that are zoned SR1 were all annexed in at the same time as the larger parcel that became Raccoon Creek Estates. When that property was annexed, SR1 zoning was applied to it. Raccoon Creek Estates went through the engineering process, platted, and it has now been generally built out. And it appears that throughout that small sliver of SR1 zoning was never rezoned and was just left over and eventually joined in with the lots that Mr. Nybarger has recently purchased. So the purpose of this is to remove the split zoning on the properties. And it's my understanding that then the applicant intends to combine those lots and then re-subdivide them to create 4 single-family lots within the 2 that are existing. Based on my review, it appears that there's enough land area and enough frontage that 4 lots in the UR1 zoning district can be or could be created and still meet all the requirements of the UR1 zoning district. So really what it comes down to is you all weighing whether or not you feel this is an appropriate course of action to rezone this small portion of SR1 to UR1, or to take some other action to eliminate the split zoning on the property. Throughout my review, I didn't see anything that would be, a major risk to the city. The lots are already served by an existing public street. There's water and sewer service that's available to these lots. And let me just go through some other comments here. Find it. Let's see.
Are we
So-
using the screen?
You can.
Oh, I can't, I'm just reading from the staff report, but, we can turn on if you want.
I just thought it might be beneficial for the
Sure.
public.
At least the map.
Sorry to make you
It's gonna
walk.
get a
sir.
real heel.
Did you bring 2 cups of coffee?
No, one of them's a cup of mixed variety of nuts. It's my dinner.
Oh.
Dinner.
I had a protein shake on the way.
It probably, yeah.
We forget to record.
No, we just gotta get that screen on.
I didn't turn the TVs on.
I say, Sean, if you want to pull that.
We need a screen like right here in front of us that comes down. That'd be cool.
Thank you, Teresa.
Do you have, I believe this is it.
Okay.
There we go. I will be your, wait, a light here.
There you go. I'll say if you want to just go, yeah, so quickly on the screen there, you can see the properties that we are discussing this evening. These parcels had been in existence for some time. They've been in that configuration up until the combination of the SR1 piece with the remaining lots that have been there for some time. Sean, do you care to go down to the next map?
Sure can.
So the map that Sean is pulling up currently illustrates the portions of the property that are zoned SR1 and then also the portions of the property that are zoned UR1. And I should note that the existing zoning on these surrounding properties, generally the properties to the north and to the west, so up and to the left on this page, are zoned SR1. So basically everything in Raccoon Creek Estates is zoned SR1. And then the remainder of the lots to the south and to the east are all within the UR1 zoning designation, and those homes have been built for some time. And so, again, that gets back to, it's really a decision of the commission tonight as to what you feel is the appropriate course of action, meaning you can choose to rezone the piece of SR1 to UR1, or you can choose to work with the applicant to arrive at a different zoning designation that meets the desires of the community with also what the applicant is intending to do. But this is basically the area in green there is only the area that is being requested to be rezoned. And so again, after my review, I didn't see anything that would be, from a planning standpoint, harmful to the city if this was approved. And generally the zoning either district is consistent with the other zoning that's in the area. This isn't trying to introduce a new use or a new zoning that isn't currently in or around this area. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or Sean, if you want to supplement, feel free.
Okay, I'm just making some notes. I'll jump in and try to sweep up a little bit.
Can I clarify one point?
Sure.
It's 3 parcels in total. The sliver.
Sorry, yeah, it is 3 parts,
And then
yeah.
the 2, but
Correct.
they're all in conjunction with each other relative to the sliver being rezoned, and if so, what would happen thereafter for the other 2 parcels, UR1?
You want to, I'll jump in.
Oh,
I think I
that's
know what the
fine.
question you're going to ask. That was going to be part of the explanation. So just for clarification, and Trevor hinted on this tonight, the zoning map application that is before you is just for this sliver here. The applicant is proposing to take it to a UR1 designation, which is consistent with the larger portion here. So to Ben's point, tonight you are not deciding necessarily on the 4 lots. However, with the information that's provided, a UR1 zoning would allow for 4 lots. An SR1 zoning would allow for 2 lots on the entirety of it. So that is another process. That is a replat. There is a provision in the codified ordinance. If it's under 5 lots, there's a little bit of an expedited path, we'll call it, that doesn't have to go through the traditional preliminary plat process. So that would be the next step in this action tonight. You're not replatting it tonight. However, with each zoning distinction, certain entitlements and rights are associated with that allow for certain size requirements to be issued to that particular lot. So that's what I want to just reiterate. Also, I think we handled the approval or denial. So I'll kind of get into the packet that I sent out. My apologies for the lateness of it. We run really fast around here, and sometimes my ability to get something out is not always on point. So you got mine yesterday. Some items that I want to point out. There is a criteria piece that the board should look through, 113706, criteria for review. I've filled some of those things out, and also had some conversations with some of the zoning members for follow-up questions. I'll read some of these out loud. Relationship of amendment to public health and safety and general welfare. Trevor touched on this a little bit in his report. General welfare may be challenging to quantify, and some subject to interpretation. And that's what he leaned towards, the overall desire of the board. Compatibility of the proposed amendment to the adjacent land use. Trevor put a fantastic report together. I also highlighted some areas that I had a question on, and that was, what are some of the ages of the houses that were around it as far as when they were built. Also, another component was the sizing of those particular houses. So I sent out in that email additional lots that were around it that were, as far as size-wise, UR1 and UR2, how they looked at, and I'll be my own narrator here. So this is what was sent out yesterday. So a visual, and in that I also took the square footage of each house that is currently in place there now. So you can kind of try to weigh the compatibility with the current environment of the exercise that I was trying to work through. So there's some information there. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer any of that. Let's see. Item C, effects of the proposed amendment on access and traffic flow. Current roadway does have a slight grade, so consideration on clear sight lines would need to be evaluated. Haven't been out there recently, so anytime you're doing a curb cut, just want to make sure it's not a visual impairment for anybody's safety trying to pull out. Hillsides sometimes present those challenges, so that'll be something we would work through with any type of zoning or any type of plat or any type of building. The relationship of topography to the intended or to its implications, it's generally level there. Item E, nothing too substantial here. Water and sewer capacities are available. Expansion in the area may be limited. So no addition of a stub out road would be considered. So we always have to take into account anytime we're doing any type of rezoning or replatting, the stub out that would be necessary. And then as far as any other roadway improvements that have been looked at in the recent history that I can recall, 8.72 acres to the east have been discussed for future development years ago. So that dead end that exists there may be another road added at some point if that conversation were to ever occur. So those are the items for your consideration. And with that, you all for any questions you have.
Sean, if I could just procedurally, Jesse and I talked about this, but you're a recommending body for this zoning map amendment. Council makes the ultimate decision. A recommendation against approval would require a supermajority of council to overcome that recommendation, or a simple majority if it's a positive recommendation. That's in our charter.
Okay. John, we can bring you up if you wanted to speak to any part of your application or anything that staff had said, and then we'll turn it over to the commission for
First of all, I
questions. and
appreciate
comments.
everybody coming out. It's inclement weather. I asked about a February meeting, and there's no likelihood that it'll be better weather. So I think going ahead and discussing it at least this evening and getting input is good. I had mentioned to a couple of you that my son was going to pinch hit for me tonight, but his brother-in-law ended up having open heart surgery today. So Dad got to go back to work. One of the pieces, Sean, that didn't appear is the one that I added. And what I want to point out there is that any building pad would be entirely in the current existing UR1 area. In other words, behind the building line. If this being the building line for those, I don't know how visually effective that is for everybody, but we tried coloring that in based on the village's zoning map colors. And although the zoning map today reflects the red as blue, but that's an error of an employee that is no longer here. So we are at, that's where we're at. You know, I want to build houses in the blue area. We will build them ourselves. I can make concessions on what minimum standards the house would be. Square footage wise, we would tend to adhere to nothing less than what's shown in your SR2 zoning. Each of the fronts would have some cultured stone and have a covered entry, so we can have some architectural details going on. Beyond that, I think I'd like the input of the commission and certainly the audience.
So at this point, thank you, John, and thank you, staff, for the review as well. Again, just to reiterate the process, what's before us is the sliver that is SR1 and rezoning that to UR1 is what the ask is. Anything after that would be at the discretion of the applicant. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
And like I said, I want to walk through the next step because any type of rezoning would then entitle different types of uses on the different types of zoning that are there. So an action has a reaction.
Perfect. Okay. So with that, we'll open up comments to the commission, if anybody wants to start out with any notes or any points.
Yeah, if you'd like to go ahead. So on this one, so we're going to an SR1 on this, or we are an SR1 on this. I want to know first how this happened years ago, if we have any background on this, how we got one little sliver in there.
I can try to give you some background.
Had to put the
So
road over.
way back in 2003, whenever I'm going to use some visual aids here, so bear with me for a moment.
And I appreciate this being brought up. Every map that I have shows that sliver being UR1.
Right.
And that was my first confusion.
Yes. So
Why is this a thing?
what happened was when Raccoon Creek Estates was brought into the city, it was all brought in as SR1, to my understanding, in the ordinances and the documentation that we have.
Which this is the map that we're referencing for that. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So it was all brought in as SR1, Raccoon Creek Estates. Now, that was done roughly around 2003, to my understanding, thereabouts. The other neighborhood was already in existence. It was built in approximately 1960s, and the roads both dead-ended at Benedict and Buena Vista. So the additional roadways, and you can kind of see on the map which ones are older and which ones are newer, is part of the newer subdivision that was then created with that annexation as well as zoning that took place at that time. So that little sliver is in conjunction with the new rezoning that happened in that area. The ordinance that you have before you that was done back in, was it 2003, 2004?
This is 2005, this map is.
2005, okay. So apparently, this little sliver was part of the property here. The introduction of a road is kind of what gives it its oddity. I don't know why they didn't make the road all the way to it. Maybe there were some topography issues, but nevertheless, it is associated with that development that occurred back in 2004. And that hopefully gives you a little bit of dialogue and guidance. I think no one's looked at it that closely enough. When you look at it on some of our other maps, it's such a small piece. The two lines kind of blend together, so I think when they were looking at doing a zoning map, it just got blended in with the UR2, not noticing the ordinance referencing it. But going forward, the map that you got is probably the one that needs to start being really identified. So, does that give you your answer?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. It still leaves it kind of vague. So, I mean, part of it that I wanted to kind of get was, I mean, I know it's hard because nobody's still here, but the original intent. I don't know that there was an intent to develop the site. I don't know if the intent was to have an entryway. That is an odd entryway, if that was the actual intent of it. I mean, there's no signage, there's no landscaping, there's nothing to that would say that it was supposed to be an entryway. You know, right now, we're kind of left with, when you drive up that road, what you're left with is just remnants of, you know, it just looks like remnants of odd zoning is what you kind of have when you drive up through there. You have some trees, you have some brush that's up through there, but nothing that I would call out as intentional. So when you take a look at that, so part of what I would look at is what the original, I wish I could get what the original intent of it was. So I know, just looking at property transfers in that area, the property that is on Buena Vista, the second one in there, I know these originally went, that was part of the Butt property that's there. Originally, these kind of went with that, so I don't know if these were purchased to, if you can pull up the auditor, that's our best friend.
It is indeed.
So if you look at those two lots there, originally they connected with the second lot in there, Donna Butt's property.
Which home did they go with initially?
That one there.
Both pieces of property?
So at some point, they all had the same ownership.
It looks like the left one probably went with the house that was in front of that, right?
And that's what's hard for us to figure out right now necessarily. When you look at the transfers,
Yeah.
you can see that they were all purchased. For what reason, I don't know. Were they purchased to be a screen, or were they purchased to develop later? I don't know. And that's what it ties in with that sliver, so.
Just to clarify, those two lots, the one that's highlighted and the one to the east, which is to the left on the screen, those were both in existence prior to Raccoon Creek Estates ever being platted.
Correct.
Were they with that property, or were they?
At least since 2005, there's the home adjacent to Benedict Drive,
Okay.
just to the right of the yellow highlighted parcel, and then the one that's highlighted in yellow was existing in 2005, and the one to the left of it was also existing. So I don't.
They shared the ownership of, Donna M. Butt, shared the ownership of these two parcels.
Right. So one of the things I always think about when we're looking at an infill lot is I always try to find out what the original intent was.
Was there any promises made by the developer?
Yeah, I mean, were there promises made during development? Was there an intent to develop? Was there an intent to be a screen from the existing houses? You know, that's one thing I like to get the answer of, if I can, is what is the point of
Or was it just a
property
mistake?
transfers? Or was it just a mistake that happened that way?
I started to print off some documents that existed today. They were scanned in, so that's something that I can try to gather. They're sitting on the desk, but it doesn't really pinpoint a reason or a rhyme. I do know there's some infrastructure that exists as far as catch basins in this particular area. I'm not sure if.
And that's an interesting part about this neighborhood too, because when you look at it, you have sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and other portions of it. On that street, for whatever reason, you don't.
Anything I would say would just be speculation, so I'll
And if you're gonna get development in the area, you wanna make sure, since you're getting a second chance, you wanna make sure you get it right, since it wasn't necessarily on the first one. So if we do take a further look at it, you know, obviously curbs, gutters, things like that, that's something I would hope to take a look at. The other thing I take a look at, so I know that tonight we're only looking at that parcel and whether or not it's gonna change to UR1 from SR1. And that was one of my next questions, as I'm sure it will be our audience as well, is what is gonna be built there? What is it gonna look like? You know, what is the end game here? So for some of you that may or may not weigh in legally, I don't think that weighs in.
The standards that the commission is to follow are included in 113706.
Right.
So, general care, you know, health, safety, welfare, compatibility of the amendment to adjacent lands, traffic flow and effects on that, those types of things is what the committee, at a minimum, should be focusing on.
All right. But that was one of my questions that I would definitely ask is what is the end game there? Because obviously if you change it, you have 3 UR1 parcels, UR1, SR1, 2 totally different home products. So something to think about.
John, did you guys have any mock-ups of what the houses are gonna look like yet? Not yet, okay.
As I sit here, and I'm not trying to play hide and seek, but as I sit here, I don't know if we're talking 3 lots, 2 lots, 4 lots.
Right, you're not gonna pay to get all those designs
And,
until you know.
footprint-wise And what, you know, the ultimate requirements may be, are, so, no, I've not. I can commit to generalities.
Yeah.
In that, you know, we intend to have covered entryways, i.e. small porch, cultured stone in the front. In square footage, we want to up the game from UR1 standards to SR2 standards. Because that's what fits the market.
Can you fit the SR2 standard houses on there?
Yes.
On those the 4 lots?
Yes.
All right, well, that's,
And part of the reason for that is that strip in, and part of that causes those lots to be just a bit deeper
yeah.
than the lots that butt to in the rear, for example. The house on the corner is like 2,100 square feet. We had a graphic up on that a minute ago, and it's in excess of 2,100.
John,
And it's a ranch.
I should probably ask, if we're gonna ask John a question, it's probably should come up to the microphone. Is that, do we plan on asking?
That was my only one,
Is that
sorry.
Can you repeat word for word what you just done? That's fine.
I'm sure there's in the room that can.
Sorry, I should have had you come up beforehand.
Okay.
I asked if you had a mock-up,
Do
yeah.
I have mock-ups? No, I do not. And part of that's just not knowing what the end game is here. I relied heavily on the zoning map that was available and stubbed my toe in that regard. The lots, one of the things I said, Ben, I apologize, this is not word for word, but one of the things I reiterated is it's 25 foot, it's essentially 25 foot deeper than the lots that it butts to in the rear, and that's because of that strip. That would allow us to build a floor plan that's more front to back. I would point out to you the house on the corner, would be the house that you see directly under what's labeled SR1. That's nearly 2,200 square feet. And that's a ranch style home. And that is on a lot that's a bit bigger, a bit larger than a UR1 minimum lot.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, Jesse? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, what makes it unique is, I mean, if you turn that into UR1, you have a really nice UR1 lot. You have a lot that's typically bigger than what you're gonna get with a UR1. It's just the housing that comes into it. Now, if you're saying that you're going to do a larger house, that makes it different. A UR1 type house, you're gonna end up with 1,400 to 1,600 square feet.
You know, it's.
And that's kind of small for what the market would want.
Right, what the market wants.
SR1, funny enough, you can go down to a 1,700 square foot single story ranch, 2,000 square foot 2-story. So it definitely does change things.
Since I've been invited back to the microphone, I'll comment on something that you said. This is strictly oral history. I wasn't there hand in hand when this happened. I am told that the Butt property, which is still owned by the Butt family, is, and Donna, who I don't know, is in a nursing home. We dealt with her daughter on the land.
Okay.
And she made reference through the conversations, and Ryan, what I'm doing is telling you this came into existence more of a matter of subtraction than addition. And what I mean by that is, Mr. Budd, I'm told, is the gentleman that laid out the subdivision that we see with the existing homes today
Okay.
on both sides of Benedict and the back of Buena Vista. He's the gentleman that laid them out. And the land in the rear was something he owned, but they quit building road, so it was never accessible.
Okay.
So, and then the Raccoon Creek project abutted it, obviously, in the rear. And the street alignment is what brought the, that reserve into existence. And for full disclosure, on the DNJS, that is Dan and Nikki Lane, their first initials, and John and Shirley Nyberger. So I don't know where those three are tonight, but you have to look at me.
Thanks, John. Do you have other comments, Jesse?
I mean, my only thought in general is that the majority of the land is UR1, so it seems reasonable to me that to rezone to get a common buildable, parcel. So it seems reasonable to me. I think it meets all the requirements that we have in 3706. So pending what I hear from public comments, I think it meets the requirements. That's all I got.
Okay.
I did have a question about sidewalks that, I think some of the, are we required to have sidewalks here? Are we gonna put sidewalks in? Because, I always like to have sidewalks whenever we get development.
Is that a question to staff?
Yeah, can we throw that down to you, whoever knows most about
I'll
sidewalk?
dive into that. That was some scribbling notes that happened just shortly before this, because I figured Jesse was gonna ask that. So, going back to, this is a zoning map amendment, whenever we would do the preliminary plat, whether it's for 4, 2, 3, whatever that case may be, the applicant will then have to go back to 1103.2, that'll be the plat for subdivision. There's a preliminary, but then there's the improvements that are associated with that. If I have it pulled up on my computer, I will try to share.
And in particular, I was curious whether one zoning SR1 or UR1 would have different sidewalk requirements, if I can,
Oh, you really want to get technical, so now I am gonna pull up the code just to make sure I've got it all. But there's a section 1109 that calls out for improvements.
So I'm getting ahead of myself on the sidewalk thing.
A little bit, but
I can protect
I knew you would have the question, so sidewalks would be required, as well as street trees. That's 1183 through the
Okay.
landscaping code that would be required. Street trees, sidewalk, actually in the improvement section of 1109, there's a call out for curb and gutter as well. So that'll be something that probably maybe a pinch point that would have to be navigated through this board or through staff, depending on the outcomes of what's happening here. The other piece that I know Ben's gonna bring up is Title 13, so I'm just gonna jump on it now to save us all the headache. Title 13, the distribution of more than 1 acre by a single property owner would require a Title 13 to be in place, and that would require some stormwater management to be addressed to that specific area. So there would need to be stormwater calculations. Potentially, I'm not an engineer, so I'll speak from a very unprofessional standpoint of this. There may need to be some stormwater management techniques and requirements that are instituted for this particular development. As you notice with the larger development, they have a retention pond or had a retention pond at the base of that particular development. That's to capture that stormwater so that it doesn't just overwhelm our storm structures or overwhelm the creeks, things of that nature. So that is one item that is going to maybe be a pinch point as well, depending on the types of development that happen on this particular lot. So I'm more than happy to get with the applicant if you have follow-up questions on any of those, and I can point you to the code for further reference. Or did I miss anything on that?
No, I think that's correct.
Okay.
That's all I got.
The only part of sidewalks that I would bring up is, back to the oral history of it, I have always heard that topography is the reason why there aren't sidewalks back there in that development to begin with. That's always been, because I've had the same question when we've talked about other parcels back in that
Sorry.
development.
To clarify, you mean within Raccoon Creek
Correct.
Estates?
That there are
So
some
there,
sidewalks.
that's what I said, it's
Because my
chopped up
son
how
wrecked
they
his
did
bike
it.
when we lived back there on one of
Yeah.
them down a hill, like on that corner on the bottom left. Yeah, it's really steep.
There's
hill.
some there, and then around the corner up in the
Mm-hmm.
top left, there's some.
The Buena Vista side
Yeah.
has it all.
Yeah.
None on the Benedict.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. That, the Benedict side is more what I was referencing. Thanks for the clarification, just
Yeah.
because of the topography back there. That's always been
That's interesting.
verbally said. I don't know, that to me doesn't necessarily hold up, because we're always talking about wanting to connect the rest of the city with respect to walkability and what have you. And so I would just to throw that out there, if it were challenged in any way, shape, or form, I think that has been a common narrative for that particular part of the city. But walkability, for me, holds no weight.
To respond to the topography, Buena Vista has considerable topography challenge as well. That one does have sidewalks and it does have curb and gutter.
Yeah.
The Benedict portion here does not have sidewalk or gutter in its entirety. I don't know why that provision was not put in place, but it does appear that on the Buena Vista side, has the sidewalk and it does have stormwater, or I'm sorry, curb and gutter, that are in existence, so.
So just from a curb and gutter perspective, I don't assume we would need to have something to tie into. With sidewalks, I think you make an argument that you can fill in the teeth as we go, like we've done with other portions of the city, but just as a heads up. I have some other calls, but I'll defer to you, Kristen, if you have anything that you wanted to bring up.
I have a few things that I thought about this, and I've known John for many years. So, but when I think about this neighborhood, I think when you turn that corner, to me, that's when you enter the newer part of the neighborhood with the bigger lots. And I think about it from the perspective, well, there's a couple things. So one, from the schools, like we know when we're developing, we want to do more commercial development before we do residential, because we have so many residential that were approved many years ago and our schools are really full. So I'm really cognizant to thinking about how many homes do we add that aren't already pre-approved. So I'm thinking about the schools. I'm thinking about water and sewer supply with the commercial development that we want to come. But I also think if I lived across the street in one of the new homes that's built from where this would be, I'm not sure I would want to see 4 homes right next to each other. I think I would prefer larger lots that are more close to what I'm living in and what I have to look across the street and see. So when I think about that, that's why I'm interested to hear neighbor input. I'm putting myself in those shoes. Now, if I'm John, I want 4 lots. But if I'm living across the street, I would want 1 lot there, personally. And I live in Concord, and I live right now, and I live on a 1/4 acre. So I understand small lots, but I also can see from a neighborhood perspective, and when I think about our comprehensive plan, and I think about the growth framework that the city has laid out that they say is their goal, when I look at making variances and concessions and changing things, it would only be something that drives more towards those goals. And I am struggling to figure out how making that adjustment helps further those kind of goals. So supporting the schools, supporting the city tax revenue, having diversity of housing. I think we have a lot of smaller homes. We don't have as many bigger homes to choose from. So those are the things, and I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say.
Well, I'll make one comment that I'll be interested to see how you vote on those 1,200 apartments that are coming back for final approval.
I haven't seen anything
I
about
know.
that yet, so I'll have to do my reading.
Perfect. Anything else? You good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. The couple comments that I have, one is to staff with respect to the current zoning. From what it looks like at this point, I don't think either of those 2 parcels could be developed because they don't technically have frontage. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
So the decision that we're making is really going to drive what can be developed in those parcels. If we keep it SR1 and say it can't be UR1 for X, Y, and Z reasons, it's going to stay undeveloped, or there's going to be a conversation about UR1 to SR1. But all three of those parcels need to have the same designation to be developed relative to whatever zoning designation they're ascribed, right? And then at that, you'll need to ensure that you've got frontage assigned for those two lots, so there'll either need to be some kind of agreement with access and easement, or that frontage will have to be broken off and combined with the properties that are going to be developed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Making sure I'm shaking my head in the right way.
So, for me, what it boils down to, in a lot of respect to, is the 30,000-foot view. No pun intended, because we're probably right around 10,000 feet with what we're looking at. But when we're looking at this area and we're looking at development, it is tricky because you have larger lots abutting and you have smaller lots abutting, right? However, when we talk about zoning, the way that I'm thinking about it too, is we're always talking about highest and best use, right? Highest and best use being larger lots, lower density, typically, especially when you talk about abutting one side or the other. That to me says SR1 rather than UR1. And that's where my mind sits. A lot of it goes back to, if you look at 1136 A, general welfare, you can talk about incrementality with respect to how many students maybe may come from four homes rather than two. But incrementality over the long run turns into much larger chunks than in just that moment in time. And that's where I keep coming back to highest and best use. So for me, even though it may check a lot of the boxes with respect to the criteria for review, they're landlocked currently, they can't be developed, and a highest and best use, in my opinion, would continue to be low density with larger lots. And that to me is an SR1 type. Because at the end of the day, intent matters in the moment, but changes happen, volatility happens. A decision made today, given a variety of different circumstances over the next 6 months, these parcels could change hands. And even though there's a desire to build an SR2 on a UR1, that may never necessarily come to fruition because the landowner will
Has the
have
right
the
to-
ability
yeah.
to build a UR1 on a UR1. If that parcel were to change, it were all to be zoned to that lower zoning classification. So that's where my mind goes. Does that make sense?
No, I actually had written down the piece that you mentioned there at the very end. The distinction of that zoning would follow it. I don't know if a developer's agreement would be in existence. Typically for a zoning map amendment, you don't necessarily have a developer's agreement. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so I'm tracking in the right vein there. So I don't know how to navigate that if that was a desire. So that would be gymnastics that we could go through, but
But
I see everything that you're saying.
Decision A will lead to outcome B. And a zoning designation will lead to a development of a parcel relative to what that parcel is zoned, whether it's SR1 or UR1, regardless of the intent of whoever owns the property at the time of the classification.
Should have told us you wanted that rezoned before you told us there was gonna be 4 houses.
No, I mean, the 4 is what,
Would you still do it with 2 houses? Would you still build there? Because I mean, we are,
No, I think that's
John,
what
would you
occurred.
mind, I'm sorry.
because it is sort of, like Ryan said, it sort of looks undeveloped now.
I think that's an unfair question, Jesse.
Okay.
I'm not.
That is a little unfair.
Poking a finger
I
in your
agree.
eye. I'm just saying
It
that's
is.
an unfair question
Okay.
until I learn everybody's intent. I can tell you that it's zoned UR1, and I think with UR1 comes certain privileges, be it owned by DNJS, John Nyberger, or one of you folks. The zoning is the zoning. That's been in place since zoning was created in the village of Johnston. So from that standpoint, I was wanting to work through that. I heard comments, and I think possibly from you, Ben, that if we changed owners, we can't protect the fact that I would commit to an upgrade house. That's not true. That's been done by this board before, via recommendations made to council for, as recently as the New Albany
So be a
parade
condition.
in the last couple of months. So, correct, gentlemen?
I would
A
very
conditional
much,
approval?
I would very much caution the commission and the city council against adopting a conditional rezoning request. That there rarely are they documented correctly or recorded correctly. Conditions get lost, things, you end up in a worse situation oftentimes than you would have if you just approved straightforward rezoning or didn't approve it at all.
But
Mr. Trevor,
didn't,
do you feel that any of that went on with New Albany? in the
yeah,
last
you
couple
did
of months?
recommend us to approve that New Albany
Well,
company one
PD
was
is
like
totally
8.
different. PD is a custom designed zoning district for
Okay.
a piece of
Thank-
property.
thank
That's where
that-
you have a developer agreement in place, and to Sean's point, not sure if that would be
That's
applicable.
a-
So would
Thank
it
you
be
for that
beneficial
clarification.
for me to go away and come back with PUD on this?
You don't have enough land acreage to do that, I'm sorry. You need a minimum of 350 acres for that, which is not possible to get.
Okay.
But I would, to wrap that up, I would caution the board from recommending a conditional approval.
It feels like it would be akin to like a deed restriction that really can't be applied to by the city.
Yeah.
Can.
Ohio is different than other states, but other states that I've worked in, it's actually, the city cannot adopt a conditional rezoning. So I just,
And the developer cannot offer?
it doesn't matter what the developer offers. This is you are requesting a standard zoning district that is applied universally the same across the entire city. So you can't then come in, basically by doing that, you are creating your own zoning district, which is what the PD is intended to do. So that tool has been established, the PD tool. But in your case, unfortunately, that PD tool just doesn't apply.
Okay, Johnstown, I believe, allows private roads for 4 houses.
Okay.
Can I do a cul-de-sac? Just a cul-de-sac bulb in the middle of that and fan 4 lots off of it? No, I'm dead serious.
No, I know.
I am absolutely, I'm serious, it's heart attack here because it's UR1. And with UR1 comes entitlement.
No, I'm
Now,
not.
I stood here and offered
Sure.
to deviate from the entitlement minimums.
No,
But that doesn't seem to be a vehicle to get me where I want to get and where some of these folks want to get.
Correct. I don't think that is the best way forward for you or for the city to try to do that. I think we need to refocus the kind of the
Well,
framework.
I'm not here to any alternatives. I'd love to hear some.
No,
more.
please let me speak.
Sorry.
What I would
Sorry.
what I would recommend is that we focus the conversation on what is actually being requested. John is not requesting to rezone all 3 of his parcels. He is only requesting to rezone the parcel that is directly adjacent to Benedict Drive. So I caution you to start or to continue discussing the possibility of rezoning the other 2 parcels that he has not requested to rezone. I don't think that is the right way to go about this. John has made a specific request to rezone 1 parcel of the 3 that he owns. I think that this conversation should only be focused on that parcel. He has been forthcoming in that he plans to create 4 lots. That's what the zoning district, based on the regulations that are in place, would allow for. So I think what you as the P&Z have to evaluate tonight is whether or not rezoning that sliver of property along Benedict Drive is appropriate or not. And that's my recommendation.
So I hear what you're saying. What I would also say is that with the review of the application, it does give an if-then
Correct.
in the last paragraph that lends itself to coupling the 2 together because of the outcome, the expected outcome of what would happen given a yes or a no.
I don't disagree. However, had I never been told that 4 lots are being
Sure.
created, I would have reviewed this strictly for is that zoning, regardless of the end use, appropriate for this area, and that's how I would have reviewed it. I referenced in the report that 4 lots are proposed because that's what had been shared with me, and so that's why I felt like it was important to include in there. The applicant had been very straightforward with that, so I wanted to include that in there. However,
Well, I think that's intuitive, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rezoning isn't happening because we want to clean things up. The rezoning is happening because somebody wants to develop the parcels. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't want to,
Sure,
right? You wouldn't
doesn't
mind.
matter. Yep. Fair.
That makes sense.
Okay. Any other comments from commission? before we open up the public comment?
I'm anxious to see what the
Well-
public has to say.
I would say one more thing, that we do have an interest in combining landlocked parcels. I think we could all agree on that, correct? So, that would vote in favor of this, but I see you guys' points too. So let's go to public.
Anything else, John, that you want to add before we go to public comment?
No.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, we'll go ahead and open up for public comment. If you have a desire to speak in this application, please approach the mic. And then we would just please ask to keep your comments to 2.5 minutes. And if we can address the board,
Justin Keeley.
perfect.
I live on 368 Buena Vista, right next to where those are going. I think you've all hit the nail on the head. We don't have a problem with an SR1, something like that, going in right there. It's the 4 parcels. It's all gonna be stacked. Boom, 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 boom. Like you said, when you go into Raccoon Creek Estates, it's all open and nice, and that's the way it is. That's why we love it. It feels like country in the city. I get that's not what you're trying to do here, but when Barr lived there, Barr how many times tried to buy this land from Mrs. Butts, but she would not budge at all because she didn't want anybody to develop behind her. That's why it wasn't. And you're also right, there is no frontage back there for a reason because that's just what it was. I don't know. So if he's open to doing like an SR1 type deal thing, I know it doesn't make as much money or something like that. You're probably out, I get it. But that's what that whole area, when we see it, should be developed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen, you stole some of my thunder. So,
Take it
I'm a
back.
visual person, so I got handouts for you. Just watch everything from 10,000 feet. We're gonna put some boots on the ground here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So, the meetings I've been to, this might take a little bit longer, so hopefully people will just give me the extra time. Planning and zoning is a combination of science and art, right? You've got the regulations, you got what's on paper, what's black and white, what's allowed, what's not allowed. But then you have the art part. The art part is making things look like they were meant to be there. The visual part, when you drive down the road, you walk down the sidewalk, you look on either side of the street, you go, this looks like it was planned properly. It wasn't hodgepodge of all kinds of mixed pieces together. So, and it's even more a challenge with infills like we have here. UR1 was up there first, those were built back in the 60s. All that was farmland. Raccoon Creek came in, SR1, so now you've got another zoning area. Now we've got property that, as you can visually see on this first page, is bordering both those, right? I mean, on 2 sides, it's got SR1, 2 sides, it's got UR1. So how do you make that look like it was always meant to be there, right? How do you do that? So, the second page, we're gonna put boots on the ground. We're gonna take a little drive through the neighborhood. You're coming off 62, make a right or left, either which way you're going, on the Benedict Drive there. So on page 2 there, and on this page here, I've got 3 bullet points, right? So as you're driving up the road, it's got 1, 2, and 3. That matches up with the bullet points on page 2 there. So you come in up 62 on the Benedict Drive, you're in the UR1 area. Number 1 there, you're looking to the right, to the left, you've got UR1 housing, the lots are the same, the houses are about the same, you're a neighbor. On the left-hand side, you look out, you see your neighbor across the street, they look like your neighbor, they vice versa, they turn around, look at your house. You've got similar lots, similar styles of construction.
So you're at 215.
So hopefully you can give me some extra time. As you drive up Benedict north, you come around the curve. You got that curve right there. That's the second picture. instantly that looks different. Right from that point, it looks different. And Kristen, you mentioned that yourself. You start to see SR1 houses.
So we'll give you one more minute, and then we'll move on to the next commenter. If we have time at the end, we'll bring you back up to finish. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
So as you make that curve, you run into SR1 housing. And on that second picture, you see a house there, that first house has a frontage of 230 feet, the second house has a frontage of 170 feet. The property right to the left of that is the expected development that's gonna go in. So you got 4 houses, UR1 on one side of the road, on the other side of the road, you're gonna have SR1 houses. They don't match. They are what I call milk and orange juice. Great beverages, but not together, right? So as you progress up Benedict, the rest of Benedict is all SR1 housing. It's all like on like on either side, and that's what you have. And I'll quickly add, why is that little portion, that little sliver there? I think someone had the foresight to know that there was a couple undeveloped properties there, and they were gonna keep SR1 on both sides of that road. Simple as that. My recommendation is that we don't allow that SR1 to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Got your
ma'am.
timer?
I do. I don't know how to
just
read
teasing.
it, but I have. Hi, my name's Maureen Keebaugh. I am a resident of Raccoon Creek Estates, but we're in the, what do we call it now, the bottoms? I don't know. Down off of, around the corner on Buena Vista and towards Edwards. But we use this road all the time to get to 62, so you can see, I come up here and go out. My concern is I'm okay with people developing property, My concern actually is safety. So if you look at the curve there, it's almost a 90-degree curve, and then if you watch, you can't see the topology, but then there's a hill too. So as you come around the curve and there's a hill. So if you're walking there, you kind of have to watch both angles at it. My concern is depending on where driveways are placed on any property that is developed there, there's already 2 there right on the curve, but it's a little tricky because the house on Benedict on this side they can park outside their house, which they have. And I have come around and gone to the other side to get around, and all of a sudden there's a car on the curb. It's a narrow street and there are no curbs and no sidewalks. Am I close?
You're good.
So that is my concern, is that I think regardless, I think if there were 4 homes, I don't see how you could get a driveway that wouldn't be dangerous. I don't know enough about SR1 and 2 and 3 and whatever those numbers are, but that would be my biggest concern. And in terms of walkability and sidewalks, I love sidewalks too. On Buena Vista, there are sidewalks, but please keep in mind that the people that purchased those homes on Benedict were not required to put in sidewalks in the past or curbs. So anything that you look at it, that affects not just the new development, but the current development too. And I don't know enough about this, but I think there's some issue with UR1 and shared utilities as opposed to us, you might want to look at. So,
Shared utility.
well, I don't know. In UR1, you can have shared utilities, right, or not?
I don't believe so.
Within the UR1 zoning district, centralized utilities, meaning city-provided water and sewer, are required, whereas in SR1, you have an option to use a well and septic system if you have enough land area to do
You
so.
need 3 acres though.
Okay,
for-
so I don't know if that would have an impact on that or not, but that was just one thought. And my personal supposition on the little strip is that they just built the road over too far. If you think that road was not there when they bought it, it was part of all of the lots. The other thing I will point out is the houses next to this, to the west side, their backyard goes all the way to the street. So putting sidewalks on, it's a sticky wicket that you have to deal with, so I
Yeah.
have my piece.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Houston. I'm gonna try to refrain from getting emotional. As a realtor, I talk people off the ledge every single day, and here I am, basically fighting for my own neighborhood. most of these people here are here because we believe in our neighborhood. We believe in why we bought in our neighborhood, and that was because of the lots. It's because they're bigger lots. And Kristen, you got my heart because you're talking like somebody who lived there.
I
who
did.
Wants to live there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you are turning the corner from the old Benedict to the new Benedict, is a completely different feel. And so my plea is that you would not allow this to be rezoned. I'm asking you to keep it SR1 so that those lots can look uniform with what's already there. And just, you know, in regard to safety, the more driveways, the more cars. We've got grandkids, we've got dogs. We don't want additional traffic. So I'm just, please don't change this. None of us want that.
2 lots per acre, so they're supposed
Thank
to be
you.
5 acre lots.
How's it going? My name's Charles Harger. We live in the house right here. The large house there. So we moved in 2018, made good neighbors with the butts, helped them cut the grass, things like that. I've got 5 younger kids. They've played in those back lots. I'm a little biased, obviously. I understand.
Might be for
development.
sale before they even.
Well, yeah, I talked with the butts and, had an opportunity, couldn't afford it, whatever the fact, I don't care at this point. On not getting that land, that is. Me personally, I've been able to see, even before those houses behind those lots were there, just nothing but woods, it was very nice. I was reluctant moving into the city. My wife's like, can we please move to Johnstown? I'm like, oh, okay. I'm from the country, so having that back space was very nice as far as I was concerned. And talking with the butts, the reason that SR1 zoning was put there was because Mr. Butts, when he was still living and had rezoned that all, was to keep those lots from getting built on while they were living there. I understand things change. I'm not opposed to change to a certain degree. I would be opposed to having 4 houses there just because I will have 0 view anymore instead of looking in people's back windows. And I'm gonna have to put in privacy fences or shrubs, it is what it is. Me personally, I'd rather keep that SR1, that little strip there, in hopes that the other spots would get zoned SR1 and just have 2 houses there, as opposed to 4. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Connie Ryan again. We live on Edwards Road, and we built in 1990. And when we built, all of that was still the woods. Across the street was where I grew up and played on Suicide Hill. Our son, when we lived down there, Suicide Hill. Our grandchildren went down Suicide Hill. So when it first started to be developed, different companies came in. We went to all the meetings because first it was going to be apartments, condos. We have fought for this property for years. Finally, it was a development that our whole neighborhood, the Shaws, the Chrissy Kings, all of us have gone to council meetings over this property. So we finally got a company that came in. I don't know, SR1, UR2s, whatever, but my feeling was the square footage had to be over 2,300 square footage of that house. Was Mr. Nyberger said 1,400. It's like,
That was me.
Correction, please.
Okay.
I did not say 1400.
I said 1400.
UR1
Okay.
says, you're correct, in the UR1 states 1400.
Okay.
I'm saying this to defend my honor here.
Thank you.
because,
Oh,
because,
I
I did
know,
not
I'm
say
just-
that.
it just scared
And
me.
I'm saying to you that I am not in
SR1
favor of
1700, right?
There, I'll throw the square footage around.
Thank you.
Let me clarify
Okay.
this, man.
It just scares all of
Let me
us
clarify this. square
that
footage.
live in that area, that we're so proud of our area. I mean, the deer still run, and we feel like we live in the country. And we don't. We've got city water. We've got everything we want. And we want to keep it, and I'm not in theirs, but I literally live where whoever lives across from that property, when they pull in at night, oh, they got home, because they're
Connie's watching you.
Exactly. So anyway, I would hope to keep it 2 acres or whatever, where, yeah, I'm right there.
I'm calling you out.
Sean's showing
I
your.
didn't even know this was gonna happen tonight, but I'm so glad I'm here, so I can support all you guys in saying, we wanna keep our country. So, 2 houses there, and I knew Donnie Buck personally, and Donna, and Kim's the one he's working with, and I think they would be proud to have 2 beautiful homes on that property.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
You brought
Declare,
back that sledding hill. I have all kinds of memories now,
Did you
right?
go down there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you
Still,
landed the
I'm still
creek.
here, right?
You landed the
It
creek.
works. Landed the creek, right? The creek at the bottom of the hill.
Don't take away Suicide Hill, but-
Glad to hear that come out. There you go. All
to
right.
clarify the square footage, that was me. So I said UR1 housing is in a range from 1,400 to 1,600. You have a 9,500 square foot lot. These are the minimums, by the way. You have a 9,500 square foot lot, 70 foot of frontage, 35 foot setback, 25 foot rear setback, 7 foot side setback. SR1, you have a minimum of 1,700 single story square foot, which I was surprised in that neighborhood. Looking at,
Restrictions are 25.
yeah.
I think it's 2,000.
And they may be that there was deed restrictions put on that. Just looking at face value at the zoning, 1,700, 2,000 for a 2-story, and then you have 20,000 square foot lots, 95 foot minimum lot width, which some of those have changed. There's a lot of 80 foot in there. 35 foot setback, 35 foot rear setback, 10 foot side setback. 2 units per acre is what they're trying for. So just to clarify what you guys are looking at, the minimum, again, deed restrictions, you probably have some. Which lots they're on, we'd have to look and see. So just to clarify that was me who brought up the square footage.
My name is Christine Parks, and I live on Buena Vista. I would like to address your comment about just looking at the SR1, that is the issue here today. I do appreciate the fact that you are looking at the additional factors that are involved in all of this, with the fact that there's a difference between the SR1 and the
UR1.
UR1. And I appreciate that you are going that extra step to understand what that implication is if you change that. I know that you want to build new houses, and
Would you mind addressing the board? That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
I know this individual wants to build new houses, and I'm sure he wants to get the biggest bang for his buck, but those are words that aren't on paper. It's not set in stone. They're not a part of Raccoon Creek community, so they're not under our bylaws. So those words are empty to me. So I just want to tell you I appreciate your time in looking into this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rob Growy. I live at 108 Benedict Drive, right up on the corner here. First of all, thank you, John, for being transparent with everybody here, open and honest. My opinion is to keep the SR1 zoning, to keep the same look and feel of the neighborhood like many of my neighbors have already expressed, as well as the safety, keep the value of our neighborhood and the same look and feel, like you said, Kristen. When you turn the corner, you feel like you're entering the larger lot size, and would like to keep the 2 lots. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, if there is no other public comment, I do have a couple other things to add. Sean, can I take the computer? Sure. Not computer, but the TV hookup.
We'll go ahead and close public comment. I also want to make sure to give Commission a chance to respond and
And
John a
feel free if
chance
you
to
want to do that,
respond.
go ahead.
No, by all means.
Well, I'll just say I appreciate everybody coming in. That was a lot of feedback, and that does make a difference on how we judge things. It's been a while since we had such a strong voice from a community, so I will say that was.
Yeah, absolutely. It holds a different weight having those that live adjacent to in the area with come in and speak about a particular topic, any topic, be it this or commercial development, et cetera, because you're there every day. So comments matter, participation matters. Absolutely appreciate everybody being here and those that spoke as well, took the time to speak.
Okay, so I wanted to clarify some of there's been a lot of various discussion points tonight on how things happen the way they are. This is the original plat from Phase 1 of Raccoon Creek Estates. This was pulled from the Licking County Recorder's Office. So it seems that some of the reason why there's a difference in curb and gutter and sidewalks between Benedict and Buena Vista is because Benedict Drive is technically a private roadway. There is no indication as to maintenance responsibilities on this plat, things like that, but from what I can tell, and I'll get up and, I know this won't be as beneficial for everyone. Initially, these lots, the lot 27, 26, and 28, all actually went through the roadway and created these 3 parcels in total, created this small sliver that we're discussing this evening. There's a 60-foot easement, technically, that the roadway sits in, and then on top of that, there's a 20-foot sanitary sewer easement that I assume the city's water and sewer infrastructure lies in. At some point, these portions of these 3 lots were aggregated somehow and sold off from these original parcels. That's not against any sort of plat or anything like that. A property owner can sell off a piece. However, that is a little different and would explain some of the differences in sidewalks and curb and gutter on those streets, if I had to guess, because sidewalks and curbs and gutters are not cheap. A private roadway, apparently, by the city's code, does not have to have those materials, which is the only thing I can think of based on looking back at property records that would kind of reveal why they are different.
Has the city ever accepted this road, Sean? Do you know of?
It's a private road, it's not accepted by
What
the
does
city.
that mean? Like, help me understand.
So we don't
plow it.
We don't.
A private road is just that. It is a
We plow the
that is
road.
not owned by the public.
We don't maintain the street.
So we should.
The city does not maintain that road.
The city still plows the road.
The city
like,
definitely
wait, what?
plows that road.
It's supposed to mean, whether we do or not, I don't know.
I'll say that, unless there was an agreement.
That was dedicated.
It was, yeah, but it can be dedicated by ordinance later on.
Okay,
It was dedicated at a later date on a rededication plat,
okay.
and that's when Reserve B came into existence.
And that was on a later
I'll
plat?
tell you 2005.
Okay, I'll
Look it under
go,
what map?
I'll go find it.
So just as a question that I have, so it was, John, you were a part of this project, so I'm gonna lean on that and then we'll have to verify later. So it was dedicated,
Correct, that started out being a private road.
okay, so it was a private road.
Your ordinance says the private road can serve 4 lots, period. That was dedicated at a later date. Some of those lots you'll see today are enumerated like, and I'm working from memory here, 27A, for an example, stuff like that. And that was dedicated to the village at that point with that dedication plat.
And with the dedication, I'll defer to Yaz, does that then make it a public roadway? Or is it still a
Yeah.
private roadway that's been dedicated?
Yeah, it makes it
Should be public, yeah.
Cherry Hill is the other private road
Yeah.
in the city that we don't maintain. But I recall hearing about this being a private road before. I haven't recalled hearing that it was dedicated. That's an important fact, that if we have documentation, we need to.
We're looking
We
for it.
have that documentation, because Trevor brought that up, and, yeah, I remember hearing that a long time ago as well. That's an important point, for sure.
Important point to this matter, or just important point separately in general?
Do you want to jump into that?
Yeah.
As far as what I'm understanding, one of the requirements for a lot to be buildable is it has to have public roadway. Now, I know Mr. Nybarger has stated that you can have a private road that access is for. I would need to find that in the code to make sure that that is accurate. Not saying it isn't, not saying it is, something I would need to look into. I do know that there is a provision in our code that states must have public access to a public roadway. So if this was a private road, no matter what you zoned it, it would exclude it from being a buildable lot. So that is why I believe Trevor brought it up from another zoning perspective, of another hurdle that could be introduced into the conversation at a later date. So I appreciate the background. I see how this, all of it.
That's why I
unfolds
asked the
now. It
background
makes sense.
question.
So I appreciate the effort that you
Well, it
gave.
looks like
in
they
trying
were
to give us
never
background.
intended
So,
to be.
well,
It appears it's been dedicated though, because there's more than 4 houses on it now, right?
Right, or somebody didn't.
You can have up to 5
You've seen the provision.
in the county.
It appears that it was dedicated.
Appears.
Well, I'm sure John
yeah.
remembers it being dedicated if it was dedicated.
I don't
And
discount
there's a
that.
trade-off for other work to be done during those, when that was happening.
And the 4 parcel being a private road, that's something staff will look into to get you an answer, because I know that's something you're gonna wanna check into, so I don't have the answer for that right now. The only answer I can give you is that, in my understanding, any development has to have a private road associated with it. It may have been done in the past. The past is not where we draw.
It doesn't really
our
matter
from.
for us now, yeah,
So-
I got you. I'm with you, trying to do things the right way.
Follow the book, you all tell us what to do, so.
Trevor, yeah, Sean, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up from a staff perspective?
The only thing is, I just want to clarify something Trevor said earlier. I think the point is that the request is for a rezoning of the sliver. So, there's no request for a rezoning of the 2 larger parcels, and this body should not initiate that. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Those 2 parcels, you can certainly take into consideration what will happen if the sliver is rezoned, but the idea of rezoning.
You don't want me to make a motion for it all to be SR1, do you? Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's something that probably we shouldn't.
Strictly this part.
John, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up to the board?
And
Or do you have something else?
if I may, Mr. Chairman, there was the conversation of tabling, and I want to be respectful of the applicant to the notice.
No, I'm fine moving forward.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's.
All good.
Okay.
So was there anything else, John, that you wanted to address after hearing comments from the board? And if there is, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the
I would like to
microphone.
make the observation that with the
John.
advent,
John, would you mind coming to the mic? Thank you.
my mother told me I had a big mouth, so I'm not used to going to the microphone.
Thank you.
I would like to make the simple observation that with the advent of the portal, that we'd lose human contact. And I've had questions about this thing all along, that I would like to sit down and work with knowledgeable people. But I've actually sent an email asking to do so. We fought to even get it loaded on the portal. And I understand through Terry that the portal may be going away. All I'm saying to you is, I feel that it would be nice to come and sit down and be able to work eye to eye with somebody that can represent a thought process on how to move forward. Because as I stand here this evening, I've wasted $800. And all of you can go ahead and vote no. I don't care. There's no ill feelings on my part whatsoever. But to get where I'm at, I'm $800 deep in this process just to make enemies, just to come up here, and get beat up. And I've reached a point in life where I don't need to pay $800 to get beat up. I can get that. I can stay home and get that. Thank you for your time. That's all I would ask. I would encourage you to go ahead and vote.
So what I would say to that, John, is, in my opinion, the way that the commission is run, hopefully it doesn't come across as being beaten up or making enemies. I was just talking to Kristen before the meeting. I like to deliver the process. I love the conversation, love hearing from the community about their points of view and the applicant from their points of view, whether or not you've lived in the city for 70, 80, 90 years, or, you know, you're new last month and you're still a stakeholder.
At the end of the day, there's
But it's the conversation is what I appreciate.
as fast as I've moved in 10 years. At the end of the day, the staff makes recommendations. I don't even know who the staff is. I don't know who I have access to. Trevor is outsourced. I assume he only goes to work when somebody up here calls him. And I feel a cup of coffee in 45 minutes, this could be resolved.
So to that end, I would say, to your point, 113705, E, within 30 days after the public hearing, provided the commission shall recommend to council that amendment be granted, et cetera. So the way that I read that is we could table this as an option of the board for one more meeting, give us 2 weeks to have conversations internally, dig up some more documents that we might need to dig up with respect to context and questions that have been asked tonight, and then have it on the meeting for 2 weeks from today, and then at that point, we would need to make a recommendation. But it would give us that 2 week time frame to talk through. Is that an accurate assessment?
Mostly. There's no need to table it because the public hearing has happened, and so I think for the record, we could just say that we're withholding.
No action.
No action
No action
until the
taken.
following meeting, which still falls within the 30-day window.
Okay. So in an effort to ensure that your $800 is well spent, would you be okay with no action tonight? That would be
I'm
my.
fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with whatever the board wants to do. I mean,
What are you suggesting happens within the next 2 weeks?
Having conversations within the staff level, if we feel as if there's any more information that is going to be brought up as a result of conversations tonight that may help lend clarity to conversations, to questions that the board has brought up and the community has brought up in any way, shape, or form. Because what brings me back is the document we saw about the private roadway. Was it dedicated? Do we have documentation that it was dedicated? Things of that nature. So if we feel as if we have other documentation that would support or assuage any concerns, change any minds, or lend any clarity, then we can do that. If not, then obviously Mr. Nyberg is ready for a vote tonight. We can just move forward with it.
I think we've done in the past. We have had applicants come in the past in a state of confusion over what to apply for and what not to apply for, how to go through the process correctly. And I've heard recently that we have some others. So what I want to make sure, especially in this case, because this is not like an out-of-town developer running in from out of town. This gentleman has, been in and around Johnstown a long time. I want to make sure that we have an accurate depiction of what he wants to apply for and give him a shot to review what the project that he wants to apply for, and also so that the residents can take a look and see this is exactly what he's applying for. Because today, at face value, we're looking at a sliver and nothing else. Nothing else should be considered. Nothing along those lines. We can't talk about square footage. We can't talk about setbacks, anything like that. We're just looking at a sliver and saying, what do we want to do with that sliver? Do we want to make this SR1 or make it UR1? Which it's hard to make a determination on that because you cannot legally look at the entire sphere of the project. So if there's a way in the next 2 weeks that we could get Mr. Nybarger to that process to where he's able to portray what he wants to do, whether he has to change. He may have to go back and change permitting. He may have to change something, you know.
If I may just clarify.
He may, like, right, he may have to edit the application, but I want to make sure we're looking at an accurate depiction of.
Yeah, if I could clarify, you're certainly permitted to look at the relationship of the proposed use of this site in terms of, you know, the availability of services, public services, and as to the general expansion of those plans.
I understand from a legal process,
Yeah.
we'll probably have to deny, or, you know, we'll have to make a ruling on this application at face value, but.
You
if
can take into consideration.
Short of me
what he's-
withdrawing it?
I'm not saying we have to deny. I want to make that clear.
Right.
I'm saying we have to make a ruling on this application, but I do want to make sure that our applicant understands the process and is able to, whether he has to apply for something different, whether he has to do something completely different. I want to make sure that we're taking care of the public is
Yeah,
what I want to
I
make
can
sure
tell you
we're
right
doing.
now, I mean, I think, my guess is the purpose of this is to eventually combine the lots and then plat it.
Absolutely.
I think the lots can be combined as is, it just confused the zoning. 'Cause the county takes care of the lot combinations.
Right.
And my recollection of lot combination requirements is exact ownership and contiguous. So,
At least if nothing else, you have a more marketable piece of property because it has frontage.
So from a staff standpoint, and I want to jump into what Kristen was asking, because I had the same question, is, and over the next 2 weeks, what is the desired outcome or goal that you hoped for staff to produce? And I get the extra documentation that Trevor was able to dig up. It's helpful for background, but it's not relevant necessarily for a zoning application, a rezoning application. So, and
Whether
I
it's
want to
billboard or not
defend, I want to
doesn't-
defend staff, and I want to defend the direction of the city a little bit, because first, there's the financial piece. So no secret, we had a planner, we don't have a planner anymore. So right now, we are outsourcing to MKSK. So that third-party situation does exist. So we don't have a physical body in here, but anytime a complex application gets delivered to the city, we then kick it over to Trevor to review.
I assume we're billed
Sean, as I
hourly.
understand it, Trevor's not accessible to me.
Well, and I'll say that he is through email, and I had this conversation with council, and hopefully I don't get into trouble tonight, but I will. And stick my foot in my mouth, known to time to time. At this point with the city, we want to try to treat everyone equally, and whether it's, you know, a single small developer or a large land developer, the process needs to be the process. And so, in a perspective of running an efficient situation and an efficient city to the taxpayers' demands and with the finances that we have, if we were to dedicate a staff person to sit down with every single individual that came through and spend hour or 2 hour or 3 hour digesting the process, it would become cumbersome. So what we're trying to do is get to a level where the applicant submits the paperwork, can follow up with questions, which I believe you and Trevor had some back and forth dialogue through an interactive email, and then be able to present something that then the board has ultimate review. And as far as staff giving a recommendation, I don't know that staff wants to give a recommendation to decide. We give information for you to digest and review, and then you go through the criteria that's laid out in the ordinance 113706. But for me to sit here and say, you should do this or shouldn't do this, in my mind, that's not my role. I'm a staff individual. I give you information. Trevor's given information. We try to be as unbiased as we can. I always tell Terry and Trevor and myself, don't give an opinion. Say the board makes the ultimate decision on this. We'll give you information as far as maybe past precedents that have been done, or you know, the implications that could exist with one action versus another. So I'm taking this moment to stump, and I've got a boss over there and a boss over here. So hopefully I'm not going out of line with that, but I am protective of the staff's time at this current moment.
And I'm not trying to diminish that, but I will say to you, this isn't the best use of everybody's time either.
It is the process that's set forth in the ordinances, though, and I have to go by the ordinance and the process. I can't circumvent a requirement outside of it, because if there's a question asked, should we do this or should we do that, and it's left to the board, I can't make that internal decision if that ultimate decision is left with the body. And I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to defend the process, and I know, and I said this to the council the other night, this is not how the process has been done in the past. But if this is what the ordinances were written up, this is how it's going to move forward in the future, and unless they want me to do something differently, this will probably be the normalization. And I even said, this is going to get pushback from people that have done this process before. And I didn't think of you at the time, but I think now maybe that was a good example, so. I'm not trying to single you out.
A good example of a bad problem.
None of a bad problem, of things that's been done in the past.
Okay.
And the process, not that you're a bad problem, John, you know I didn't mean that.
So Ben, if the staff doesn't have resources to coordinate and sit down with John and do things like over the next 2 weeks, is there something different you're looking for John to do over the next 2 weeks before he comes back and talks again?
Well, the comment about.
Or why
40
why would he want to come talk again?
If the comment is 45 minutes, we can hash something out. It sounds as if there might be another way or format that you'd want to present your argument in. And if that's the case, we've obviously
I
deferred
think
to
it takes a give and
applicants.
take, Ben. I think that takes a give and take exchange. And, you know, when maybe Bailey went too far, but, you know, you could sit down with Bailey and you can walk away from a meeting and think, well, that's the route that I should be massaging my project. And
That was one of the problems.
Jesse, I hope I saw a bad choice of words.
Because then Bailey would come to a project to us that we would like, and she'd get stuck in it all the time.
And I, believe me, I mean, I've worked with this board for years
Yeah,
and years and years. And I mean, I acknowledge that the final decisions are made around this table, not staff table. But,
Well, what I would say
I
is
won
that.
one victory here, the portal's been flushed. It took me 2 weeks to get this project loaded.
So what I would say is,
Me and you will agree with that, John, and I thank you for the feedback, because I wanted to flush the portal, and the fact that you say that out loud verifies that I was right in that
It was,
decision. It was a terrible
And I
process.
reached out and asked for help, but I didn't get it was, what do they say? It was just.
Crickets.
Crickets, thank you.
And that was a problem, and we will own that as staff. That is not a user-friendly methodology that exists, and so we've changed that, and there is a little bit more initial interaction at the onset of the process, and so that will give some personalization. But again, staff is always going to direct them, you need to look at the ordinance. This is the process that you need to run through. So for that, I will apologize, John.
But I will say to you, as a developer, I read your ordinances too. And I mean, I have some ideas outside of what I've presented this evening. I've gone down this route because I thought this is the route that I was directed to. But I don't, you know, okay, I'll share with you, I have two more ideas. I don't care to pay $800 a piece. Take these people out the rest of the winter, so.
So I think what it comes down to is we have deferred to applicants when they've asked for tabling, if it's within, and even sometimes if it's outside of our particular time frame relative to our ordinances that we're going by, given what the project is. The outcome that we've had, and we've had a variety of different ones, we've had 2 weeks where staff has had availability or what have you to be able to talk through. Doesn't sound like, relative to what we have right now, that may be a viable option over the next 14 days, which is totally fine. That's our current state. We've had applicants where over that 2 weeks, they've decided that based off the feedback that has come from the community and the board, that it's in the best interest to withdraw and move in another direction. We've had applications come back in that 2 week time frame, and they have essentially said, I've explored other options, and this is the best use that I can present. And it's been a pretty quick conversation because nothing else has changed a bit. So I think the board at this point is more than ready to make a motion and vote on this if that's what you want to do. But deferring to the applicant would ask your recommendation for how you would want us to proceed on this to give you the maximum amount of time that you're allowed within the respect of the ordinance itself.
Then I would ask that it be tabled, and we talk about it in 1 month in lieu of 2 weeks.
1 month in lieu of 2 weeks. Okay.
Because I was partway to Florida, turned around and come back for this. So I have a wife that I need to live with. And I want
You're
to
a
keep
good
peace
man.
on the home front. And right now, we're supposed to be in Florida. But that's, so if we did, and we're going to leave again tomorrow morning. Too much personal information. But at any rate, if we could do it in a month, meantime, I'll throw out my other ideas to staff and see. And I mean, I'm an open book. I'm happy to share my ideas with all of you. If you want to see it in its working form.
Okay,
Because when I throw an idea out, I'm looking for input back.
sure.
And I realize, and the public's a large part of this, and I'm not trying to preempt that. Sorry, I'm asking all of you to come out next month, but,
My question is, where are we gonna
Just-
go from here, because you've heard all.
Just one second, just one second. Was there anything else you wanted to
No,
add?
that's it.
Okay. So relative to John's request, what is the board's feedback to that?
Well, so my thought is that when I asked you earlier whether you'd move forward with the project as an SR1, and you said it's an unfair question, and I agree that was an unfair question. Are you waiting for us to say no before you throw out your other ideas? Because if you are waiting for us,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we will say no, but are
Jesse,
you?
let me say to you, there's nothing off the table in my mind right at the moment. I can't stand here and tell you unequivocally that SR1's going to work with, in all regards.
With the
because I
money.
need to work down that
Yeah, okay,
list
okay.
of questions.
And the only reason I asked that unfair question is because we do have some response here. You've got the board here, and we can provide feedback on the other
No, I
ideas.
appreciate that.
Not to give me an out to.
I'd like to hear these comments, please.
Sure.
We're in a public meeting, if you don't mind.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Sean asked if there were any other avenues to pursue doing what you're doing, and no, this, from my standpoint, the city's code establishes a rezoning process, that's what you've requested, that's what needs to be done.
And I totally agree for this evening. There are a couple things in the code that I would like to address with staff, to get answers on.
Relative to this project,
Yes, sir.
relative to the rezoning of this
But
sliver?
as I just shared with Jesse, I want to work the details out in my mind before I throw something against the wall. I don't want to look stupid.
That's
You need
fair.
time to
That's
think.
fair. That's fair.
You need time to think on it and.
Well, to
collect-
work through it.
Yeah.
That's fine, if you need more time, I mean,
Okay. That would be my request, that we table for a month.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, John.
So,
Just one second, just one second. Any other comments from commission?
Pending public comment.
Okay, so, we'll do 30 seconds for something really quickly before we need to wrap this up for this evening. If you could approach the microphone real quick, please. We'll open up for public comment. 30 seconds is all we got.
So for tabling, are we tabling the rezoning of that strip?
Yes,
So we will come back and make a decision just on that strip?
correct.
Okay. Because there's nothing else to think about at the moment.
Correct.
No, what you want to do with the property is totally, the gatekeeper is that strip. And I thought we discussed that, that's what we're discussing tonight.
And I get your point. In my mind, the only reason that we keep this open is so he has continued access to staff, because if he doesn't have an open application, staff might not be required to respond to him.
But
And
what are we going to work on the next, is there some legal snafu that the strip can be finagled?
For me, deferring to the applicant's request because they're still within the timeline that the ordinance provides.
Okay,
That's
all right.
basically what it comes down to. for me.
So next 30 days, really nothing might happen, and we'll come back and make a decision on that strip.
Yep.
Okay.
Public comment, you had one more? Or is that?
Are we gonna be able to come back and have public comment?
Public meeting, yep.
Oh, of
Are we
course.
supposed to get notice from Mr. Nyberg or what his
Nope.
plans are?
There would have been,
That area?
there would have been a sign posted in the parcel itself, right?
That's all that's needed.
As well as a letter could have been sent out, should have been sent out
It was to the contiguous property.
to the contiguous
Per
property.
the ordinance.
Yes,
These
per the
are,
ordinance.
if I may.
Yep.
In the ordinance, it spells out specific provisions that have to be met for any type of amendment to the code. And so we follow those to the T. There was a notification in the newspaper that Mr. Nyberger had to pay for. The city did not have to bear that burden. Also, contiguous property owners got a certified letter to notify them. If you were outside of that contiguous property owner, you did not. That's just how the ordinance is drafted. I can't ask Mr. Nyberger to notify the entire city by certified mail. And then also the requirement is that a sign is placed on that specific property relative to the application that is before the zoning board that we would hear tonight. So also to follow up with your question, will there be another public notice sent out? Because this is the same application and it's just being tabled, another notification would not be sent out.
Correct.
If I'm correct on that, I'll defer to legal, but I believe I'm pretty certain that no new notifications would have to be posted because this is a tabling rather than a new application being submitted.
And when we come back, we will just vote on whether to rezone that one parcel, whether we recommend the approval of the rezoning of just that SR1 parcel. Now, if he redoes this project and he wants to make the whole thing SR1, comes back with a new proposal, then he would have to do a new application. There would be new public notice. So if there's a change in the project, there would be, it would start over and you guys would be notified but so next time, I didn't want to create that confusion if we made that implication.
Either way, anything that we plan to discuss would be made public in the agenda prior to the meeting.
Every other Tuesday, come on down.
Further clarification, this body votes to recommend to council, which makes the ultimate decision.
So motions are made in the affirmative and the vote is yes or no.
Correct.
And it is a vote of recommendation, not the ultimate determining factor.
Can I confer with legal counsel real quick?
You can.
And if the applicant wouldn't mind coming over, and I want to be respectful to the open, but I also think that it could be.
Do you want a 3-minute recess or something, or?
No. I don't mind sharing with everybody, but I don't want to be great for it. So,
Okay.
yes.
How else do people find out about this? They just get on the email distribution list? So that's something maybe we should recommend to the public. Right?
We took out the need to publish in paper and stuff like that because it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Can we just vote on something?
We can't, my deference is to the applicant.
I thought it was like a slam dunk, like after like. I was like, wait, what is he doing?
Something always comes up though.
Okay, well, no, I was like, wait,
Does something not always come up?
Something always comes up. Correct. It's always a piece of paper that we're missing or a documentation that's missing.
You jinxed
Comes
it.
up at the 11th hour.
It's all your fault, Dave.
All right.
You jinxed it.
Again,
I think the public's waiting.
well, I think it's easy to say either way, but like when you look at the pictures, like that's what I drove it, and I was like,
It just, my initial thought was the
yeah.
larger piece is yellow.
I think that like yes, when you drive it, it feels different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it does when you just look at it. You're like, well, that makes sense. Like, and I get it. And if I'm John, I want 4 pieces
And
too.
honestly, like, I wish that you see the back stuff of these 3, and if it was 3, it would match.
Yeah.
Even it doesn't really match either of them, but
I'm ready if you are, and I'll share.
we'll go ahead and call back to order real quick. Sean's gonna.
And I'll
update.
share, like I said, I'm pretty much an open book, transparency, but I did want to defer with Yaz. So the question that I had posed was, given that it has to go before council, there is another process. So if the applicant wanted to withdraw the application, there would be no additional process, no additional fees that would be associated with it, through your publications and public notices and things of that nature. So I always want to be available to the applicant to make sure that they have all the information. Whether they wanted to table it tonight or whether they wanted to withdraw it, that is another option that they can do. However, the fees associated with it seem to be pretty nominal. It's more of a time process that they would have to go through.
I did lie. There is notice given before the council.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there would be an additional fee associated with that publication. However, it could be small, but I want to make sure the applicant is aware of that. So that was the question I had. Like I said, open book, transparency, but I wanted to defer to Yaz for his legal first, so.
Yes, John.
Come on down.
In light of everything that's being said, it's my true preference that we withdraw this application, throw it in the trash can, and I will try and work with staff and come up with a couple other ideas. But as far as these fine folks are concerned, there's no need to come out next month, in my opinion, and we'll rework the application with other thoughts in mind.
Okay.
Okay?
So at this point, applicant has noted that we are withdrawing.
Yes, that.
So we won't, we won't.
Don,
vote-
you just got a bunch of friends.
So,
You don't sit behind that table.
I understand that, but
You don't sit behind that
We might want to nip that in the bud
all
then.
right, so we'll go ahead.
Are we gonna meet in your living room? Sure.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and just for the record, we'll note that the applicant for application Z23219 has requested withdrawing the application, so there will be no vote from the body this evening, and then anything else relative to this parcel will be brought up at a later date under a new application number, subject to new public notices when and if a hearing is scheduled for what is proposed at that point. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay,
You okay with that, Trevor?
perfect.
Was there somebody say benediction or what happened?
We got a couple other things to get to, but wanted to give public an opportunity, if you were here for that item, you can certainly stick around for the couple other things we have, or feel free to enjoy the rain and the wind at your own peril. Okay, so,
Yeah, I know who you are. Yeah, okay.
I mean, no, it's fair. I mean, like,
There we go.
I knew that was, the new process is not gonna be better.
what is, I don't know what the difference in process is.
Well,
Tell me after, but
We'll
what else
talk.
do we have left on? I
we'll
don't
bring
think
that, we have other
other
business here.
I don't think we do. You guys are gonna wrap it up pretty quick.
All right, so we are coming back into order here for the balance of our agenda. We are moving on to item number 8 on our agenda, which is other business. I know we have before us zoning inspector summary from November of '23 and December of '23. Terry, I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to comment on those at all, or, okay. So, are there any questions from any commission members about the November, December zoning inspector summary? I haven't seen them up until right now. I don't have anything to comment on.
Well, that confirms my suspicion that business is slow.
Maybe not.
In the world of fences, decks, and home improvement, business is slow.
That avenue, yes.
I had one comment, which it's more of a police thing, but it's sort of zoning. There's a motorcycle that's been parked in front of my office downtown for like a month.
It's gonna be a police, it would be an action of police. It's not parking.
I just told
streets.
disabled vehicles there. I know it's a police
So
thing.
disabled
but-
vehicles is something that's on the private property. If it's in the street, or right away, that is not a zoning issue. That is a police, administrative, different section of the code.
Can I take this opportunity to bring it to your attention? Or, okay.
I-
All right, it's been addressed. I won't, you don't have to make a decision.
Okay.
My son wants to buy it.
Been addressed, perfect. I have a couple items for any commissioners have any other items under other business.
The only thing that I had for this meeting, and I mean, we'll bring it back up when Steve's here, but for our yearly goals, and this was something I talked about with council too, I want to get some direction from council for this commission of where they would like us to head for the year, but I also, when we have that conversation, I also want us to have some goals to take to them, you know, for things that we want to work on this year, projects that we want to do. That's something that we've always done, so I think it'd be good to carry that forward.
So should
Then we
we,
both know where we are.
should we all have a little homework assignment to make a list for our next meeting? And should we communicate to council that we would like to request a joint meeting for the logistical formalities here.
Well, can I get a little bit more clarity on what it is, like goals? Like, I'm thinking, like, we decide what things are brought in. Are there other goals that, like, give me examples of what you're talking
So other
about?
goals, and it'll be harder for you, for the guys who've been on here for a couple of years and stuff, like sometimes we find loopholes in there, like
Things that
when
you
we.
want fixed.
Yeah, like when we go through these processes, we'll find a loophole or we'll find something we'd like to fix or change or update. Some parts of the code this code that we have now was written a long time ago. So some of it is just not up to date with the modern world. Sometimes we'll find a loophole that we didn't intend, that comes up just in the process. Some things like, our downtown design overlay, those are things that we've talked about.
That's a good example of a good.
Anything under
goal
the
we have.
zoning, and feel free to bring whatever. I mean, anything under the zoning heading.
I don't know enough to have an opinion.
In the
yet.
past, this is a good example of like infill lots, okay? Getting rid of those is maybe a goal that we had when Bailey was here. And it's sort of changed too because we don't have a staff member that's planning and zoning, so.
Well, I think you don't necessarily have to try to get rid of infill. I feel like there's going to be so much demand.
And that's just
on
another
us
example.
That you may be able to stick closer to, like, okay, these are like the ultimate, like, the North Star that we're trying to work towards in our comprehensive plan. And like, where before you may not have had so much demand for things in town where you're like, well, it's not better than nothing.
Really, what's changed with our group over the last few years is that councils has, in my opinion, has more of a preference to decide what they want us to do instead of we used to be very proactive about developing code and sending it to council. And I think now MKSK is helping us out with a lot of the code writing, so that's no longer on our plate. So part of it is a recalibration on what councils, and with the joint meetings, what councils, they have any requests for us of things to work on.
You're talking about like signage for businesses down.
Yeah, like.
I don't know that we want to talk about signage
And
this
these
year.
are just examples of things.
Yeah,
that
no,
we-
I'm like-
Like, we revamped the signage code to make it all more uniform, like it used to say, for example, the signage code used to say one wall sign per building. What does that mean when you have a strip mall and it's one building and there's, you know, every business wants to have a sign above? So like, we can fix like little things like that in the sign code. That was one of the goals that we worked on. We've done the lighting code to try to come up with, you know, a balance between downlighting and illumination. So there are sections of code that, you know, we can decide with ourselves, like, okay, what our current code might not exactly fit what our future vision is. We'd like to maybe focus in on that code, council. And then the joint meeting, once we talk about our goals, then we have the joint meeting. Council, what do you think about this idea of us working, and we'll see what we think, that type of thing.
Okay.
So.
We've had other things too where things were being, and I don't think this will be necessarily a problem anymore, but things were being enforced in a certain way that was inconsistent with what was cataloged in our code, but they had been enforced that way for a certain number of years.
We did it that
To
way
the
because
point
it's always
where-
been that way, but we don't know why.
Right, so it was a case where it was
Everybody
like,
does that, yeah.
okay, so now, you know, because it's been enforced that way for 5 years, maybe we should change our code, or maybe we should just make it known that please enforce the code, nothing else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of things. And we will run into more as we get through the year. You'll have ideas. We may see something where there's variances that come up more frequently for some reason, and you know, we grant 3 of them. Well, if you're going to grant 3 of them, you probably should just change the code at this point because you're not enforcing it. So there's all kinds of
Or
things.
the paint thing, it's a perfect example of
The
something.
paint thing is
we
gonna
could
have
put-
to be-
We could put that as a goal, and that's a little, like,
I
that
think
might be
that's
considered
like
a minor
something
goal.
that you could do quickly because it does look pretty bad.
Thank you.
Like, I mean, that's personal. I get like my personal view, but like,
Right.
you know what? It looks good on one.
When you
or
make
two
a code
buildings.
update, no process is quick and simple because of
Yeah.
the procedural, like, we have to.
We've tried to get that.
We
mural.
do, like, then it has to go to council, they review.
There's only, like,
Then it has
3
to get
options.
published.
There's no
and
buildings.
That takes like so
It takes
we
a
try
long
to like not do as many, I don't know, small ones. Sean, is that right? Like we try to kick small thing. I don't know. Not that I say that that's wrong, but nothing's ever as easy as it seems.
No, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of pieces of the code that I think a lot of people have friction with, I'll put it nicely. So to Ryan's point, probably the best example that you can use is if you do notice a variance coming through multiple times, that is an appropriate time to then take a recommendation to council. there's a delicate dance that you have whenever you're going to give council a list of your goals that may not be consistent with their goals, so then have you wasted your time
I don't
putting
think
together a list? Maybe not. Maybe council wants that. Maybe they're gonna say, hey, give us a list. The other piece of that would be the sheer amount of staff, and I'll bring up signs just because it's a nightmare. Every time you wanna dive into signs, I think staff needs another therapy session. Because it is an insanely daunting task. And the other piece of this is a lot of times there's legal pieces, specifically with sign code, that I would want to make sure we have legal submit something instead of it coming through you to legal. I would rather maybe you give an idea what you want, legal and staff say, we got what you want, let us produce a document, then you review that document.
And that's typically how it used to work with Bailey when we used to do all that.
Okay.
Not some saying we have to go back to that, but.
And if it's the direction of council, they say, we want you to initiate this, so.
But I think from
It's a process.
Brian's
We
Brian's
found
point.
last year, though, we found a couple of years ago, and Ben could tell you, I think he spent 5 years on it. We created a new code at one point, and that code, for whatever reason, was shelved, and we didn't go to the new one. But we did find a lot of places in our existing code, things that we intended to fix as we were going through that process that we didn't, and we kind of left ourselves open to some things. We might want, and we've gone back through and pulled out that new code we created and matched it up against our existing code and said we should probably just go with that. So
And I've heard
we've
you
done some of
say a
that.
couple times, like, you guys are limited on resources. So my only thing would be, if we come up with a list, we give it to council, council gets a list. I think it's, well, and Ryan, I'm looking at you because you're on it too. I think you guys have to put your like 1 to N priority
Yes.
list of these are our orders of importance, and then Sean chip away at them. Because what you don't want is to say, go do this, and it's number 75, and number one's, like, we owe that to them, like with limited staff. I mean, I have it at work all the time, right? You only can do so much in a day if you don't have a overabundance of resources.
And
that's what-
previously, when we did it, we had quarterly goals. So we said by Q4 of next year, we want this stuff. And if we get to it, fantastic. If we don't, we don't. We'll just roll it over to the next year. And because you're going to have stuff here on zoning that we're in a lane here. Council may not get in that lane ever, may not think about that sort of thing. It may not come up on their radar.
They might not hear about the paint thing.
Yeah.
You might just come to zoning and not go to council and express the same thing. So we hear about some different things. And I like the meeting idea because if they just want us to sit here and hear variance requests all year, then that's what we'll do. If they want us to be more proactive, then that's what we'll do. But I would like to have that an official sit down, and Sean will be there too. You definitely, that way he can, and it's council's job to manage, to prioritize. Again, like,
Yeah.
we can throw out some ideas, but it's really, I want to hear what they have to say for us is what my
it's a great idea.
true vision is. 'Cause that way we're not wasting anybody's time, right? Our time, if they don't want us to be proactive.
And definitely a staff's time if they're already tight, right?
And Sean has a chance to communicate it gives Sean a chance to communicate with us and with staff about what goals are feasible or are reasonable for everybody to expect, and then we can communicate to the public. Okay, we have a plan, but we're looking at fourth quarter this year, for example,
And
Or
you'll
we're looking
see
at
with,
next year, so, that said, do we need to make a motion to request a meeting? Or can we just put that on their agenda that we want to communicate, we'd like to communicate?
I think Ryan is currently the council
You're a
representative.
I would be
liaison?
the- I'm the
Okay,
liaison.
can you communicate that
Give a
too?
cue at the next council.
I brought it
meeting.
up when we were talking about other things, so I mean, it's something I'll bring up again. And we'll try to get that done as they have time. At least if nothing else, we can compile a list and forward it on to them and make sure that it gets in front of them and they see it, because I really don't want to have, just like 2 different groups. I want it to all be one cohesive unit across the board for the city.
We don't have time to be working in different directions.
Yeah, I don't want to work in different directions, because we've done that in previous years where we had like 12 things we came up with, presented them, and they all got shot down. I don't want to waste our time with that. If they just want us to see variances, we will see variances. So
Years of work.
It's a level set meeting. It'd be a level set meeting with council.
You wouldn't believe it.
That's encouraging.
Any other business?
No, other than if there's anything interesting coming to town.
Oh, the $1,000,000 question. Anything interesting coming to town?
That we will see.
Nothing that hasn't been publicly noticed at this point. We get inquiries, and then to the point that I made earlier, we say, if you have an inquiry, then make a legitimate zoning application, fill out the proper paperwork, because until you've submitted physical paperwork, it's just an idea that exists, and I don't want to spend staff's time acting upon it, because if I could go through the list of various things that the people have inquired about, it would be wasteful of my time to even communicate it to you. So I only go with the literal documents that have been presented physically. So that's what we'll try to keep it factually based, rather than speculatively everything out there that exists in the universe as far as Facebook goes. We try not to dive into the Facebook realm because it just doesn't have much accuracy. So.
The three quick questions that I had, the laydown site over at 62, has the screening been implemented that we talked about, or
Yes.
was something else, had something else
You
come
do
through
work from
council?
home, don't you?
It is, so I will say this, it
I
is,
haven't been down there.
You have been
I'm
down
down
there.
there. It's usually dark out by the time
That's
I get
true.
down.
it is up, but nobody used like a chalk line, I'll tell you that.
Alright.
Cause it zigs when it should zag. And it
There is some topography issues. I was appreciative
Yeah.
that they
But
actually
I'm happy
did
it's
it.
up.
Yeah, they put the screening up, to your point. They did put the screening up, and at this point, the application has been approved. They have paid the fee. They have put the screening up. They did do the other requirements that were put in effect conditionally by the council. I believe one of them was having a bond or a letter confirming finances, and I'm butchering that right now, and as the financier from a bank, you probably, line of credit, establish that. So I think they went that route rather than instituting a bond. So all of the items that were conditional have been met. And so at this point, they have been issued a permit to continue to do what they're doing. However, there is a expiration date on that. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, March
March or April, yeah.
April of this year. So, yeah.
The car wash,
Which one?
62 there.
Which one?
Across from
No.
Huntington.
Don't do that.
Which one?
We've had
Don't, let's
various-
not go down a
we've
rabbit
had
hole.
various inquiries.
All right, never mind.
Let's not go down
I
a
withdraw
rabbit
my
hole
question.
The applicant that was here that tabled the request before based off of comments that were brought up about the lift station that was there that was
He has
potentially.
not brought back any, because, let me go back, I gotta check the minutes. That was tabled?
Good point on the lift station.
Was it tabled?
That's what we
That
asked
was-
them to
that
check
was,
out.
Yeah, we had to ascertain
I
ownership.
feel like I
That was-
discussed this with you like a year ago.
We checked, oh, yeah, right. So
It
if
was last year.
This was in December. I think it was one of the last hearings that we had, and he wanted to.
You're gonna get back, that was kind of his homework assignment to go back, given the conversations that existed through this body, and make adjustments to his particular application, and reevaluate some things, and that was why he requested the tabling, but to a point.
I think I
where-
read that. That's the one where he was asking to move the
Street trees.
vacuums
Yeah.
closer to the road
Yes,
and remove trees and stuff.
point of order, it should have been included.
Because it was tabled at his request, we don't have to.
Right.
If memory serves us correctly, if it was tabled, it needs to be on each planning and zoning meeting agenda. To be fair, the last meeting we had was back in November, which might have been his meeting, so it was a while ago.
So the question I asked in that case was whose lift station was that? Did we find out that
It is
information?
a private lift station.
That's a private one? Okay. So if he.
I'll double check. but that
So
was
if he
the action
implodes it from putting equipment on it, that is his problem. That was my question.
Assuming he owns it. That's
Assuming he owns it, yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure, because if he was gonna put
95%
equipment
sure
there and it's
that
a
is
city
a-
expense, we need to make sure.
item. Private, it's
Okay.
his.
I don't want anybody to implode it, but
that
I'd
was the
rather we
biggest
did.
question, but it also wrote
If
back
we-
to the street trees. Okay, so TBD on that. It's still on the table. Is there anything else?
Final approval, chairman signed it, I signed it, the engineer signed it. It was revised with the appropriate recommendations that this body made. Mostly just the naming of the street was inconsistent with the actual naming of it, so that adjustment was made on that particular Mylar. The Mylars were signed, I would imagine they filed those at the county. So at this point, they are tracking forward with that specific phase. all those things were already decided and hashed out. And so as long as they are consistent with what was approved.
Is there a
shouldn't be any
time,
alteration.
before they have to start or complete? What,
So they have started the process. They have a roadway put in. I anticipate now that the roadway is in, that they'll start doing some construction of houses, much like what you've seen in other subdivisions as they start to build out. And then at some point, that road will have to be dedications of the setbacks. I know there's been some questions previously. With those specific lots, if memory serves me correctly, there's a 25-foot setback that has to be done from the front setback. So those are just provisional items that we check. That's what keeps Terry busy from a code enforcement standpoint, making sure that those things happen.
I do have one question for Terry. So back there where they're building, there were a couple questions from the residents back there on setbacks for the houses currently being built. I just wanted to clarify that they're okay.